Hello and welcome to Finextra TV. I'm Xavier and you join us in our virtual studio with three of the judges from the Fintech Zone Award. Those judges are Paul Tamala, Kate Frankish and Teresa Connors. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Be here, yeah, thank you.
So Paul, real quickly, if we think about, these awards have been around for a little while, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make and what are you hoping will be improved upon later in the year?
I think that in my experience, all of the stories are great. The people have got really interesting things to say. They just don't give themselves time to get the message across. And a couple of things that I think that they could really focus their time in on is perhaps not spending so much time on their personal history of how they got here, but of course, what their actual story today is. And we're not VCs. We're not PE companies. We're people of the industry. We understand how fraud works. We understand how payments work. So you don't need to explain that to us. I think they're a couple of the points that I would make.
Really interesting.
And to add to that, Paul, I think it's really, again, it's hard when you're you're a founder and you're so excited about your idea. It's really hard not to get too technical. And actually, that's not what really sparks interest. It's more about the outcome. What's your product going to do for the end customer, a bank, etc.? What are the outcomes that your brilliant product will bring? And seeing, last year was my first year as a judge, and seeing some of the differences in presentation, that's what really made it stand out, was, really focusing on, this is what I can do to help your business or your customers. And that's what really, really resonates, getting to that point and explaining that well, rather than the technicalities of the actual solution. I don't know what you think, Teresa.
I agree. I think at the outset, please tell us simply and clearly what is the problem then that you solve. Yeah, because that's really important at the outset, because as a judge, then you're listening through that lens. And as Paul says, we're all old enough to have been around for a while. So you fortunately, as a candidate, you don't need to explain to us, the fraud figures, if it's fraud or something like that. Other things I would say is show commercial logic as well, not just innovation. Great technology is great technology, right? And it's really important, but it doesn't necessarily equate to a viable business. So be explicit and clear about how you make returns, who pays or invests, and why they will continue to do so. So you're looking for kind of sustainability there, because that's the sort of questions that are going through the judges' minds.
And Teresa, if we think about sort of this idea that perhaps they are looking at you as if you are VCs, that you are these sort of other types of people, why do you think they have that mindset? Why do you think that they perhaps approach this from a different perspective?
I think, and it is just what I think as a startup or a scale-up, often those businesses are very, very used to going to VC houses or investors, and therefore they're more used to pitching like that. It's become almost second nature. But this is different. You're talking at this level, or for this occasion, you're talking to practitioners. So it's a slightly different vent. But in answer to your question, that's why I think it is.
And Paul, do you have any particular things to add to that, first of all? But also, is there anything that perhaps for you personally, and again, Kate and Teresa add to this, that will always strike something within you and say, this is a great person, this is a great product?
I think we are all, two things, predisposed to want to listen to the story. We're not VCs looking for the issues. We are predisposed to want to be able to help. We want the story, though. It has to be a complete story. I think so often it's like, here's the idea, that's great. Well, I think the points that Teresa's making about the rest of it is really important as well. It can't just be, oh, I've got a brilliant idea. Well, what's the maths? What's the arithmetic? But honestly, I think the biggest thing that always gets me is, I want you to be a success and I want to hear your story.
That's really nice. Would you add anything there, Kate?
Yeah, I also think you should put the right person actually pitching. And that's a massive problem, isn't it? Because if you're the founder, the person who's got the passion about the product, but you're not necessarily the person who has charisma or can stand on a stage, hold an audience. So sometimes you've just got to think about looking around you, the other people in your organisation. It might not be you that's standing on the stage. And recognising that, I think, is quite hard to do. It's a very personal thing, but actually playing, if you think about a football analogy, you wouldn't put a goalie in to actually score goals. So playing the right person is kind of key, because you've only got a really short time to grab the attention of the judges and others who are listening there, who could be your future customers. And you want to be engaging, compelling, and be able to get quite complex messages over really quickly and in a way that really grabs attention. That was one thing I noticed last year. Some people are brilliant presenters and some people really aren't, and it's just knowing your strengths and pitching the right person.
But I assume as well that whether they're good presenters or not, do you find if the content is strong enough that it still doesn't matter as much if they perhaps stumble or they're not as confident in how they present?
Well, it kind of depends if they can engage an audience. So it's not necessarily about stumbling, but if you have no energy and are monotone, it's harder to engage an audience, isn't it? We all know we've been at conferences, and we'll be going to, EBAday, which has some brilliant presentations, but you have been at conferences where somebody just talks to you in a very monotone fashion and you lose interest. So how do you grab the attention and keep the attention is the main thing.
Yeah, it's a different balance to strike, I suppose. Teresa, you host a number of our webinars. Do you see anything from speakers that join the webinars that perhaps people could learn from in that sort of switch of format?
Yeah, and this might sound a bit odd, because we all know what it is we want to say, but it's really important how you say it as well. And it's a little bit to Paul and Kate's point about, it's all right if you stumble, that's absolutely fine. And heavens, we all do sometimes, don't we? But it's about that confidence and the clarity, and that I want to be here, because you want to see that passion. You want to understand and go, yeah, they really get this. They know what this is about. They clearly understand the obstacles. They've given this thought, but it's how. It's not always just what you communicate, it's how. And are you all right if I just bring something else into the equation? Because I was listening there to sort of Paul saying about, the story behind it, because it is a story. And as Kate says, you've got to have a good storyteller, even if that's a goalie or a striker, Kate, whoever it might be. But there's something also about the use of metrics. And using metrics is fantastic, but please anchor them in context, because it's all right by saying, we increased efficiency by 40%. Well, that's lovely, well done. But as judges, we're thinking, well, over what time scale? What did you think it might increase by? What was it previously? In our heads, we're thinking, is this impressive? Is it credible? Is it scalable? And so the use of metrics and saying them correctly, I think, is powerful for anybody giving a pitch.
That's really interesting. And I just want to pick up on a point you mentioned earlier, Paul, around that it's not necessarily about pitching your CV, but that you also need some context for the company. Do you know, for you or for what you've seen before, what the perfect balance is between those two things?
I think your personal history of the presenter is pretty irrelevant to the story that you're going to tell. If you're talking to a VC, they might want to have the comfort that you've been in the industry for many years. We're not trying to trip you up. We're not trying to ask you awkward questions. We just want to understand what your story is, how it can help. And quite frankly, when we ask a supplementary question, we're doing it to try and help you, not us. We're not there to trick you. So just, tell your story. We don't need to know that in 1980, you did something wonderful. It's the here and now.
Show your age now, Paul.
Ouch.
No, I think that all makes sense. And I think it's sort of a bottom line there is to be a little bit more relaxed, but also just tell your story at the end of the day. So thanks for your insights there. It's been really interesting to hear, and hopefully we can see some really interesting presentations later in the year.
Really looking forward to it.
Yes.
Great.